So, welcome to another war game review from theplayersaid.com. My name's Alexander.
And I'm Grant.
And today we are reviewing a not war game. I know I just said war game, but this is not
It's
one.
not, yeah.
So this is called Prelude to Rebellion. It was just released from Compass Games.
Actually, it was about a year ago.
It was?
Yep, it was about a year ago. Pretty sure.
Well, it just showed up on my
Yeah.
doorstep about 2
Yeah.
weeks ago, so
Yeah.
I didn't realize it was that old.
Yep.
Oh, dang. Well,
Yep. Because remember, this is the basis for that other game I told you about, Prelude to Revolution.
right.
And that guy's been, Mike Wilner's been working on that for like 2 years. So this,
Is that coming soon, do we know?
I
it's still in the
cannot
works?
remember. It's
Okay.
still in the works.
Okay. Is this also Mike Wilner?
No, it is not. It is, let's see his name, sorry.
Marco Boutre.
And he is helping Mike Wilner. I know
is
he's
it?
like an advisor
Nice.
on it.
Okay.
Because he created this system.
And so he should, because this is a very fun game.
Well, and you mentioned it's not a war game.
No.
This is a historic
Yes.
set game that does have conflict, but it's not open war. It's struggle. It's that tug of war back and forth,
Yes.
fighting over a space, undoing what you just did, that kind of concept. But
Yes.
it's got a lot of really cool elements that you got to think a lot about.
Yes.
This game actually, to be honest, blew my mind. And we just played it.
Yeah.
It blew my mind a little bit. I didn't think it would be that good.
Yeah.
It's really good.
So
Spoiler alert.
yeah.
Right.
Having looked through the components and read the rules, I'm like, this is right up our alley.
Yeah.
It gives you a similar type of feel, whilst not being the same as things like Twilight Struggle. A little bit like Washington's War.
A little bit where you're taking
the
control.
counters
Yeah.
and it's that,
Political control markers.
yeah, any game where it's the area influence and you're trying to vie for control of things for a net gain based on what you've accrued.
Yeah.
This gives you that. It is also a card-driven game. It's a two-player game, so you get that same dynamic, right?
And
I've got a hand of events.
Yep.
I can spend action points. I can spend events. Might be aligned with you, so they're going to trigger for you, or they might be my own, where I get to do a bunch of cool stuff. You get all of that in this game as well.
Yeah. And that is one thing I know we've talked a lot about. I prefer the type of card-driven game where my events can go off on your card plays.
Yes.
Because there are some that don't do that.
Yes.
I really love that because it makes you, it's the reason Labyrinth is one of my favorite games, because
Yeah.
it makes you look at your hand. Oh, I got a hand of garbage. What can I do with this?
There is nothing quite like, and at the time you don't. At the time you're just like, ah.
Yeah.
When you draw that hand and it's.
But you
all-
have to keep a straight face. You know,
Yeah.
you can't let your opponent know, hey, I got a bunch of crap here. I got a steaming turd in my hand.
But you're right. I love that. I love, in
Yeah.
retrospect, not at the time. At the time, what a case of. But right now, you're just like, oh, like
Yeah.
I love that feeling. It's
I do
that
too.
tension. It's this problem solving, and then it's implementation of what you can do. Because if I'm holding all your events, you're not holding all your events as well.
Right,
So I
exactly.
know at some point it's going to happen to you too.
It's gonna go back and forth.
And this gives you that feel as well.
It does. This one also, I felt like there was so much tension
Yeah.
because of some of these random scoring. I mean, these dice.
Yes.
These different focus areas: the rural counties, the organizations, the external influence, and the urban counties. That created a lot of tension. In addition to me worrying about how
Yeah.
bad my hand is, I'm looking at that going, oh crap, not only am I going to play your events, but then guess what? I'm going to have to roll these dice, and that's what you want me to do. You want the rural counties to score, or you want the urban counties to score, and it creates a lot of tension.
Yes.
I felt like I was going to throw up. I mean, not that I wanted to win so badly, but I'm like, oh gosh. And I'll tell you that's one of the experiences I love about card-driven games.
Yes.
Love it.
Yeah, I
Love
in this one, you get a good historical setting as well. Now we have never. I don't know if you've ever played a game about the Canadian.
Well, mobilization and unrest in Lower Canada,
Yeah.
1834 to 1837. Could there be a more obscure and lesser known conflict than this. I'm going to say no.
That's just it. It wasn't really a conflict.
Whatever. Struggle.
Historically, they rabble-rouse, and the Canadians, the Patriots kind of gather it, and then
they crush them.
The British are like, no,
yeah.
we're not having any of that.
Yeah.
So it's not even a real war game in that sense. There was not a massive conflict that went on in a traditional sense. But it's such a neat little piece of history to explore. Mm-hmm. All the cards have flavor text on them, and there's some good stuff in the rulebook as well from the designer too. And you can feel it's this evangelization and politicization of the people out in the rural lands, and you're struggling over these two big cities, Montreal and Quebec, and you organize your forces there, and then they go out and help to organize the rural people.
Yep. And
that, you're going to affect these scoring tracks, which then you may or may not score in a timely fashion based on the dice
that's the randomness.
It's such a really neat piece of history. This is a really cool way to explore it, and it happens to be a style of game that is really good for 2 players as well.
Oh, agree. Yeah.
And yeah, you're right. The tension in this, we invest ourselves a lot in this style of game as well.
We do.
We've played a lot of these kind of games, and I always enjoy it when it's not just, I'm trying to reach a victory point threshold and beat you to your victory point threshold. That has its place, but when it's on this tug of war and it's a swing back and forth, you get that pendulum of momentum and initiative, and that's such a fun thing to play around with in a game. I enjoy that a lot.
Yeah. The other thing I really enjoy about card-driven games is the gut-wrenching decisions that need to be made about, that has 4 op points, but my gosh, that ability or that event is pretty cool. And, I always try to do kind of a cost-benefit analysis in my head. For instance, these mobilization, these areas, certain boxes are harder for you to get into. They just cost more.
Yeah.
So, man, if I have a card that can help me place 2 or 3 cubes for next to nothing, that would take me 6 points to potentially do that. You got to make those cost-benefit analysis. So I really felt that in this game. I felt like there were a lot of very well paired op values and cool events. And I love that. And it's such a great way to tell the story of the decisions that need to be made. I feel like that's why card-driven games are so great, because it brings the history in and really makes you make those tough choices.
Yeah.
Do I just go out and fight the guy here with my 4 or 5 op points, or do I use one of those really cool abilities that, it's going to pay off in the end?
Yes.
Really liked that.
Yeah, this game has some very nice chrome on it, from the way that the scoring works to things like the Saint Jean Baptiste.
Yep.
He pops
He's
up.
He's a key event.
If a card comes out, he pops up and gives the Patriot player a victory point or 2 here or there.
And some random...
Helps to add some cubes, but you can't guarantee where they are.
We kind of came down to basically it was like a 1 in 4 chance that he would come out, or was it a little higher than that?
No, it's a 1 in 4 chance that he doesn't. So 3/4 of the time
he's going to come
out. Just based on the deck of...
Yeah, looking at the 30 or 40.
1834 cards.
Yeah.
It might be a little bit... It might even be slimmer chances than that, but... He'll come out most of the time, but there's the parliamentary sessions that go on, and there are only certain cards that can only be played once it's a parliamentary session. And at the end of every parliamentary session, you get a patriot in Quebec, and you get a couple of victory points because they're arguing the cause. And it's little bits and pieces like that help to keep the game rolling. If the victory tracks aren't doing what you want them to do, you get little bits and pieces, drops in the ocean that will add up over the course of a game to help the momentum, help keep the game roll on as well. I think the game takes about 3 hours.
Yeah, and we actually played through 1830. We almost got to 1837, and the Patriots scored an auto victory at 20 points. And it was one of those things that we could see it coming for a couple of rounds, and we were fighting back and forth.
Yes.
And it's like, 1 card here, and then, is a parliamentary where I get an extra VP or 2, and it pushed you over the edge.
Yeah, it kind of snowballed.
Yeah, so I liked that you could see it coming as well, because you can really try to react to that very quickly. Early on in the game, I was looking at my cards, having some doubts about that, and my ability to potentially affect some of these scoring opportunities. But I think overall, I realized that, yeah, you have a good opportunity to do some damage. But great little game. Nice chrome. What was the...
the Rebellious Spirit track. That's the other part of the game where... like, it's very expensive to invest into this, but once you get to a certain threshold, the pressure is really on.
Yeah.
The Rebellious Spirit track, it's 0, 1 to 15. If it gets to 15, the game ends.
Yeah. Automatic, and an auto victory for the Loyalist.
It is not an auto victory.
Oh, it's not an auto. You're right.
But if you end the game that way, it's probably quite likely that the Loyalists would have
lots
won,
of victory
because
points.
they'll have invested a lot of troops into the war readiness,
Yeah.
which provides victory points. And if you're bum rushing through this, you've probably, it's probably middling victory points. You score everything one more time.
Yeah.
You score these, so it's probably a good chance that they would win, but I don't know. I'd like to see statistics on that.
But yeah, that brings up a good point. You can't just willy-nilly go for that. You've got to actually kind of manage the victory point track over here, because if you're looking in this box, the war readiness box, and you've only got 8 victory points, where you could have a bunch in there, right? If you do the right cards. If you can't overcome the difference, you don't want to end it. So you really got to it's like a seesaw. If I'm focusing too much on this, maybe I'm not going to win because
you've sacrificed the rest of the game.
Yeah,
basically.
So it's a nice thing that maybe if you get the right cards at the right time and you have the opportunity to pounce, you can do that. So it provides another opportunity for the Loyalists to win, other than just kind of by the traditional way.
Yeah, and that's with these styles of games, you have a core idea where it's, how many guys do I have in a space? Mm-hmm. And we're fighting over, who's got the most, right? You've got a bunch of that, but then it's what else does the game have? Mm-hmm. And the way that the scoring works in this is very cool.
Yeah.
Just these extra bits and pieces help to keep it fresh and keep it its own game as well. And that's some stuff I really liked about it, at least. What I'll do is I'll show you the game and kind of how at least some of it works. And then we'll wrap up with some final thoughts. So here's a look at the board, and see the majority of the board is taken up with these holding boxes and tracks for the different influence cubes, for want of a better word. And these represent rural counties, and then over here we have Montreal and Quebec, which represent urban counties. And down here we have this kind of scoring area. So you have a victory point swing. It goes from 20 on either side. But here we have our kind of advantage and scoring levels and markers. So for each urban county that you control, you get the advantage. So the Loyalist controls Quebec, and Montreal is neutral. So it's just, we move up 1 box, which is worth 2 victory points. If the Loyalist controlled Montreal as well, this would go into the 4 box. And what that means is that every time this marker moved into the scoring box, we would award VPs, and then you do some kind of attrition there as well. And it's the same thing for the external influence. I was able to get this up to 4. Every time this scores, we get 4 victory points on the swing here. And again, same thing with the organizations. Organizations are based on some dice rolls that we'll get into, but you have organizations both in urban counties, and then you're able to kind of export your either patriotism or your loyalism to the rural areas and form rural organizations, and those will move you up or down these influence tracks. And these are organizations fairly difficult to get out, so they're actually worth a lot more. Each box is worth 2 points instead of kind of the 1 for each of these. And then you have the rural counties, which is literally control of each of these rural counties. For each one you control, you're going to get a swing. If they're neutral, or you can get, you can rest control, it's going to swing back and forth. But when these score by the rolls of the dice, the rolls of these particular dice are what advance these tracks, and when they get to the score, you score that particular area. So you're not guaranteed for when these will score. There's a likelihood that they will if you keep playing cards that will trigger the, for example, if I play this card either for the event or the ops, then at the end of me doing everything, I'm going to roll the EI dice, the external influence dice. That's this one. When I roll it, it has 1, 2, 3 external influence sides. Then it has a UC, urban counties, an O, organizations, and an RC for the rural counties. So it's a 50-50. I will move up the EI box. You know, if I roll the dice, oh look, I go up the EI box. Boop, that goes closer to scoring. But I might roll, this is the RC instead. So I'm trying to get this to go by playing this card, trying to do this, but I'm really looking at this to try, I want to score the EI box. But I rolled this, so this goes up instead. And this little interplay between the cards that you play aren't just ops and events, it's also going to help you get closer to scoring things you want to. So the distribution of those and how and when you play those is also very important as well. And I really, really liked how that works. But that's how you score things. If you control all of these, counties, you're going to be really high up this track. And so when you do trigger this, you get a bunch of victory points. If you can get to 20, then you're going to score an auto victory. Otherwise, you're going to play through to the end of the game. Or the other way that's going to happen is if the rebellious spirit can get all the way up to 15, that's going to trigger the end game in a basically a military military going to march out and quash everyone. Then what you do is you score all of these one last time, and then you add in your war readiness points. So the British the loyalists would add 8 victory points plus whatever they've got. So you might get some real big swings if you can end it this way. But this requires a massive investment to get it to go up. That's some of the neatness of this. The cards themselves have an action point and an event, and then it gives you that dice that you need to roll. There's this generic deck, it says generic on it. You will always pull 3 cards from this deck. Some of them are Patriot aligned, some of them are Loyalist aligned, and some of them are unaligned, they're neutral. And like in the best of these card-driven games, if I play a Loyalist event and I'm the Patriot player, I get to do the 2 APs, and then they get to trigger the event. If the event can't trigger, or if it's a neutral one and I play the APs, it then goes into this opportunity pool. And the opportunity pool is kind of, all the cards are off shot just a little bit. You can spend, instead of playing a card, so instead of, spending cards that might be disadvantageous at the time, or they might be enemy ones, I can spend my opportunity points, 1, 2, to trigger this. So I spent my 2 points because it's 2 action points. I can trigger only the event, so I trigger the event. So this is your space race, so to speak. This is your way to prevent yourself from having to play enemy events. However, these are dealt basically randomly at the beginning of each turn. You get, usually you might get 2 from the generic deck and 2 from the active year deck. If this is the case, the British player doesn't have that option. There's nothing in there. And so what they're hoping is that the enemy player has to play some events in there, or they're just hosed and they have to play all the events in their hand, and it's not great. So there's a little bit of randomness as to how this plays out, but it adds something to the game. It gives you an extra opportunity to do an extra action or to do things that aren't in your hand. And I thought this was a really fun little piece to play with. But it's a game where you're adding cubes to the board. Some of them are, it's just 1 point to add them in. Some of them it's 1 + 1, 1 + 2. So it's very expensive in certain areas for either player to add guys onto the board. Very expensive for the Loyalist player to add influence into these areas. Very easy and cheap for the Patriot player to do it. But if we flip over to here, near Quebec up here, it's a little bit cheaper for the loyalist player to add guys, and much more expensive for the Patriot player. So the layout of the board is something that is also very, very interesting in how it plays out too. But it's a CDG, right? So it's quite traditional in that sense. I play a card, you play a card, I play a card, you play a card, until we don't have any left and we've used our 8 turns. There's some neatness on the track with some parliamentary events. There's the Saint-Jean-Baptiste spaces where if you have the Saint-Jean-Baptiste card out, which I have lost, then you get bonuses, you get victory points, you get extra random cubes out on the board. There's neat chrome and history in it, but really it's vying for control, rolling the dice at opportune times in order to trigger, or at least trying to trigger your scoring when it's possible for you, when it's most beneficial, and that's really the crux of the game. The other part that I really enjoyed is each player has their own little menu of actions that they can take that are unique to them. It's their special abilities, and those are very fun to trigger. But you have to be very choosy about when you do that. So that's basically the crux of the game. What we'll do is we'll wrap up with a few final thoughts. So that was a look at the map. That map is a strong word.
Yeah.
It's a series of boxes
Although
overlaid on a map.
It's a nice board.
Yes.
I mean, I feel like it looks nice. It's functional.
It was very clear. There was never a time where I couldn't see anything or didn't know what anything was.
I actually liked the way they lined these columns up because it made it, to me, easier to count how many counties I had control over versus how many you had control over.
Yeah, you kind of count them in diagonals.
Yeah, I thought that was a kind of a visual way to help. I would have liked to have seen maybe a marker box here that says, oh, Patriot control. That way we could have known immediately, rather than just having to, count them up. That's a simple thing, but these are for the orgs, but it would have been nice to have like a control box that says Patriot or Loyalist. And
maybe.
It just would have been easier to count. I really cool the different actions you have too. I don't feel like you have so many. You have to go through a long menu. You have like 4 different options. So I liked that they kept that kind of to a minimum. I also really enjoyed, and I'm not going to pronounce the French name, but it's a card that each side has.
The English one's called the Governor's Privileges.
The other one I'm not going to say because it's a French word and I'm going to butcher it. I'm not going to try.
French special
I
actions.
apologize.
Not even French, they're Canadian special actions.
Right. But it's just those special actions where you can get a bonus here or you can prevent a bad event from going off. I really liked that. I only used one of those. I think you used 2 or 3.
2, yeah. You can only use 1 per hand.
Yeah.
So you have to be very discriminating about A, when you use it, and B, which one you use. Because they're one-shots. You can't ever do this one thing again.
Yeah.
So you're like, oh, I get to neutralize this terrible event that I have in my hand that would go off for you.
Yep.
But then I'm like, oh no, what if I have a worse one later on?
Yeah, right. What if I have one that's going to lose the game for me? And therefore I have to play it.
But that's when you get into the game of this. When you play it 3, 4, 5 times and you start to know the decks.
Yeah.
Like in any of these games, you can be like, I am going to hang on to this little special action.
Right.
For that time where I get this card that I know what it's going to be so that I can pitch it.
Yeah.
And those things lend itself to long-term play with other people.
This has, I think, a lot of replayability because, 1, you're not going to see all the cards. 2, you may not get some of those special cards. 3, you can use those special actions in different orders. These scoring tracks are going to be... There's going to be times where you're going to roll rural counties over and over and over again. It's like in that game Catan where
everyone's got wheat.
Well, or everybody puts something in a 10 and everybody gets it every time.
Yeah.
It's very rare that it doesn't happen, or it happens that way, but just a lot of replayability. I think there's a lot of engagement here. And once again, my favorite part of these games, the tension, the requirement to think about what you're doing, the requirement to focus on 1 or 2 areas, maybe a third, but you can't focus on everything. If you do, you're going to lose.
You got to keep all the plates spinning.
Yeah.
But sometimes you're like...
You're going to let that one go slow.
Not that one.
Yeah.
Just we're just going to barely touch that one.
And that's a great part of the game. That's a great part of this kind of a system.
Yeah.
But we really like card-driven games. I would have to say this is now probably in my top 10 card-driven games that we've played.
Oh, yeah.
There's no doubt. And I think once we play this again and again, it's going to become even more and more... It's probably never going to eclipse some of our, Washington's War I love and Labyrinth we love.
Washington's War, you get the actual combat part.
Yeah.
Which is neat. That's something a little bit different.
Which maybe that would have been cool, but that's not what this game's about.
This is
not what it's about.
One thing I really enjoyed about this game is it has different decks for each year that you're in. And I don't know if we've played a game quite like that, where you have a generic deck from which you draw 3 cards, and then
out of your hand of 7.
Yeah, and then you draw your other 4 cards from that year's deck.
Yeah.
And so each year you're going to draw from this generic deck, 3 cards, but then your special, the other cards will change through all these progressions. And there's 34, 35, there's 3 different decks.
Yeah.
There's 3 different decks. Let me just double check. Yep. So your card pool changes, and that breeds in at least some of the chronology of the things that happen. And that's something that I like. I know Paths of Glory has a similar type of thing, where you have your mobilization decks, and as the war progresses, you add all these other bits and pieces in. This is a slightly different because you're pulling from different bits and pieces, but it's that chronology. As the time goes on, these events happen. Then these events happen.
Yeah.
And I really, really like that you're pulling from both, so you're guaranteed to get some of the good flavor from that year, as well as just the good stuff that you can do as well. That's something I really like in this game.
Yeah. You also really liked the opportunity pool.
Yeah. It was neat. I've not seen anything like that before. And it's fun to play around with new stuff. So basically, you'll draw X number of random cards, and they just go into the opportunity pool, for which you have some points that you can spend to trigger the events only on those cards, if you meet the prereqs for them. But then, for example, if it's a neutral card, if I have a neutral card in my hand, and I just spend the action points, that goes into the neutral opportunity pool for anyone to trigger the event. If you don't do it, I might do it later on as well.
Yeah.
And if you play one of my events, you get the actions. If the event cannot trigger because the prereqs aren't met, goes into the opportunity.
And that happened, I thought, a couple of times.
Yeah, so then I can see it, and I'm like, ooh, I have to work towards those prereqs
to get
do
that
this.
out.
I can trigger that. It does this. It's a really nice way of just adding something extra to these games.
Well, and it's a way for you to mitigate the damage from bad cards in your hand.
Yeah, if you have a couple bad hands, instead of playing all your events, I can spend a couple to play some of those opportunities, and then I can just hang on to these.
Yeah.
But then there's no guarantee you're going to get more of those.
Yeah, that's
so
true.
At some point, your opportunity pool might bleed out, and you're like, great, now I've got to play these.
And mine did, I think, in the 3rd or 4th turn of the game, and I'm like, oh, crap, I'm going to have to play these cards now. So, once again, that's a neat element. I think that's an additional element that's been added to the system to create just some additional opportunity and, in many ways, some additional thought and decisions being required.
Yeah. This, I'll be honest, is one of... I don't have a bad thing to say about this game.
I don't know that I do either. I don't.
And that is, that's a massive credit. Again, this plays to a style that we like, right? So take that for what it is.
Well, and it's a well-made game too.
It's incredibly well produced. You mounted map, all these nice cubes.
Love the cubes, the
custom
acrylic
embossed
cubes.
Dice. You get the nice green and red ones as well. The cards are great. If I have to nitpick, here it is. If only there were some pictures on the cards.
That's true. Yep.
But some of them are so text dense you can't fit a picture on them.
There's a lot of text
I understand
on
why
those.
there isn't.
Yep.
But I'm just making that up.
I don't know that really matters.
This is it's one of the first times I could say I don't have any issues with this game from Compass.
Yeah.
I had a great time with it.
Yep.
I don't know. I can't say anything else more highly about this. I liked everything about it. This is a game for me.
Could anybody pick this game up, you think?
I probably, most people could. This, you could market this in the same way you can market 1960 Making of a President to non-war gamers.
Twilight Struggle.
Yeah, this has maybe a more obscure theme than both of those games.
Right.
So That's where you find someone who's interested in it, which I presume all Canadians would be.
Yeah, I mean,
right?
Yeah,
but
I'll be honest.
It was not complex.
Yeah, I don't know that the theme really deterred me either way. I learned some new things, but I don't know that I really.
But I wouldn't hold it against someone who didn't
said,
play war games.
Don't want to play.
Who was like,
you might get that.
That sounds a little bit dry.
Yep.
I wouldn't hold that against someone, but rules wise and mechanics wise, there's no reason anyone couldn't pick this up and be turned off by it in any way. It was not complex to learn.
Yeah,
we learned it in probably half hour or so.
30 minutes, I think. Yeah,
reading the rules
and I think that first turn we were really hesitant to do. It would now be fun to go back and play this again because I think we would come out of the gate ready to go because we know more what we're trying to do.
And we've played a lot of these style games, so it's figuring out how the pieces work together. And once you do, you're like, okay, great. And the game goes along at a really good clip once you understand what it is that you're trying to do.
Yep.
And so the 3-hour playtime's probably fairly reasonable.
Agreed.
But yeah, this is Prelude to Rebellion. I love this game.
I really liked it too, a lot.
I think I loved it. I think it's really, really good.
Yeah, I think I did too, but I think I want to play it some more.
No, I agree.
But yeah, it's all there. All the elements are there. The card-driven elements, the tension. It's all there. This is a good one.
I hate that it was a 2019 game.
No, it's like 2018, I think.
Yeah, copyright 2018.
Yeah.
Man, that's sad because this is like...
Because I remember I covered that in a war game.
List.
It would. I covered that in a War Game Watch feature like 4 years ago.
Yeah.
I mean, it was one of the first ones I think that I actually covered from Compass in that list, and I was like, this looks really good. So, but that was a long time ago.
This is a great game. So it's available. So you can find it and get it. I recommend this.
I do too.
You should play this game.
I definitely do.
2 players, pick it up. 3 hours. You sit down and play it in an evening, but it's...
Well, and I would think that anybody's going to pick this up and they're really going to enjoy it. I really do. I think you're going to enjoy it.
Yeah, to me, there's nothing you couldn't enjoy about
it,
right? There was nothing where I'm like, that's lame, or that's kind of a turn off, which some games have that. This did not. I mean, we said it doesn't play this again if it wasn't so late.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yep, no doubt.
So, appreciate you guys tuning in. Prelude to Rebellion from Compass Games. Go check it out. If you're interested, I've been Alexander from theplayersaid.com.
And I'm Grant.